So welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Emma. I'm the program coordinator here on the community assistance team at MHP. I'm joined by my colleagues Katie and Shelley, who have been instrumental in helping plan this training, strengthening local boards and commissions to support affordable housing. And I'm going to kick things over to our director, Christine Medor, to say a few opening words.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for taking the time to join the final of our 3 sessions on strengthening local boards and commissions. We are really grateful for Eastern Bank Foundation for funding this series and would love to hear from you, your feedback after today's session on how we can improve or continue to provide similar trainings as these. And we have a really exciting lineup of speakers for you today and hope you will gain a lot from this experience. Thanks, y'all.
Great. So I just want to go over a few housekeeping items. So we will be looking for your questions in the chat, so you can put those in. I'm joined by my colleagues, I think Karsten and Laura, and our Chief of Public and Community Engagement, Dana, is here as well. So we'll be in the chat helping to answer questions. So we'll pause between each presentation to take questions. Please keep yourself muted during the training. And if you'd like to turn on closed captions, you can do so in the bottom toolbar of Zoom. For those of you who are looking for CM credits, don't forget to log those. And we will get started. So this is a new training series, as Christine alluded to. So we would love your feedback. I see there's a link in the chat, so please fill that out after the training. We began developing this series when a fellow from the Eastern Bank Foundation challenged us to go a bit deeper in our work with local boards and commissions. They suggested there's some gaps in the local level on the understanding of affordable housing and how municipalities can support the creation of more diverse housing options. Our work in communities across the state has confirmed this as well, and we're so excited for you all to be here. After some internal brainstorming and planning, we developed this 3-module training to do a few things to help people engaged in supporting affordable housing, people interested in becoming engaged in supporting affordable housing, and key local boards and commissions that touch the housing development process to be more effective moving affordable housing forward locally. This is the 3rd module in this training series, and a common thread that we've noticed from the previous 2 modules is how long these projects can take. And so we are here in this 2nd module to highlight the value of local advocacy and local advocacy groups and how they can really help move the process along. We've heard from developers about the value of local official support and advocate support. So we're really excited to have 4 wonderful speakers here to help ground us in some effective strategies, local examples, and how they have done this in their own spheres here in the Commonwealth. So kicking things off, we'll hear from Monica Keel, the Municipal Engagement Program Manager at the Citizens Housing and Planning Association, commonly known as CHAPA, who will talk about the Municipal Engagement Initiative and reducing barriers to community engagement. We'll then hear from Joyce Mandell, a regional organizer with the Abundant Housing Massachusetts, also known as AHMA, who will talk through some of the best practices and a few specific examples of how groups got started and those looking to create affordable housing advocacy groups in their community. Laura Holmes, a community lead with the Revere Housing Coalition, will then share the group's history and the work that they are doing on the local level to further affordable housing conversations and support in Revere. And then Amanda Bebrin, the Director of Housing Advocacy at the Community Development Partnership, CDP, will wrap things up on all of the wonderful work they're doing out on the Cape. Again, please put your questions in the chat, and I will hand things over to Monica.
Thank you, Emma, and thank you so much, everybody, for joining today. I'm going to start sharing my screen. Can everybody see that okay? Give me a thumbs up. That'd be great.
Looks good.
Perfect. Thank you again for having me. Again, my name is Monica Keel. I am the program manager of the Municipal Engagement Initiative at CHAPA, Citizens Housing and Planning Association. And I'm really excited to be here to talk about how we build a culture of support via coalition building through our Municipal Engagement Initiative. I also want to say I'm a very fast talker. So if I am talking too fast, please let me know. Thank you so much. So just a little bit about CHAPA and what we do. Again, if you see me looking down, I have printed my notes. I like to have them the old-fashioned way right in front of me. So just a little bit about CHAPA. We are a statewide pro-affordable housing nonprofit organization that encourages the production and preservation of homes that are affordable to households with low and moderate incomes, and to foster diverse and sustainable neighborhoods through planning and community development. We've been doing this work for more than 50 years, and we've been doing this through advocating for opportunities at local, state, and federal levels, working to expand access to housing through our coordination of the Massachusetts Home Ownership Collaborative, monitoring thousands of affordable homes across the state, and we develop the affordable housing field through trainings, forums, our Young Professionals Network, and a mentorship program that we run alongside the Mel King Institute. CHAPA brings together a broad group of stakeholders, and we believe together that we can build a better future for everyone in the Commonwealth. And so next, I want to talk a little bit about the team I work for, the Municipal Engagement Initiative. You may have also heard us refer to this as MEI, but the point of this initiative program is to build support for affordable housing production in communities across the Commonwealth. So why MEI? Why do we do the work that we do? As laid out in the Neighborhood Defenders Report, this is a report where researchers observed and reviewed thousands of hours of public meetings and examined who was making comments on housing projects. They compared with the general population. They found that commenters were disproportionately white, male, older homeowners, and they showed up overwhelmingly to oppose new housing developments. So as I'm sure many folks on this call are aware of, local support really can make or break local housing development in our communities. And yet so many communities lack a strong pro-housing advocacy group. And that is why our CHAPA developed the Municipal Engagement Initiatives. Our team was founded in 2018, and we work with residents on the ground to change the conversation and support existing local efforts in favor of more affordable housing and housing diversity. Again, as you all know, each city or town has its unique housing challenges, so we focus on bringing together what we call big tent coalitions to support affordable housing production. This is a map of the communities we have worked in the past and the ones we are currently working in. We are currently working in Hull, Braintree, Waltham, and Salem. As you can see, we have worked across the state, and we're always looking to work in more communities. We have truly worked from the Berkshires to Barnstable and in between. So if you do not see yourself represented here and you want to work with us, please let us know. We're very open to working with anybody. Rural, city, suburban, we want to support everybody in their housing production needs. So as I mentioned before, we want to reach beyond those usual suspects to bring in folks in a big tent coalition, because we truly believe that everybody has a stake in housing. This is a non-exhaustive list, and we're always looking to expand upon it. So we hope that you see yourself here, whether you are a part of a council on aging, a veterans agency, a tenant advocate, a resident, a racial justice advocate. All of those things intersect with housing. And we like to start with the steering committee, but even after what we hold a launch event for a coalition, we've been meeting with them months and months and months. We're still always asking, who is missing in the room? What perspectives do we need to bring in here so that we are having the most diversity in the space, and we're truly hearing from what is representative of the community? And of course, the important part about working with communities, especially when you're coming from an outside organization, is meeting the community where they are. we do our coalition building through two models. We have a full municipal engagement initiative community, so that's the full MEI, and we have our MEI Lite. The main difference is the time of engagement and support that we provide the communities. So with our full communities, those are usually folks that are trying to launch a new coalition, and we're starting from the ground with a couple of advocates who are residents. Sometimes we're starting with someone who works for the municipality to build that stakeholder list and invite those into that launch meeting to start conversations on how to build support for affordable housing projects in your community. Our light communities is where we're spending about 2 to 3, maybe even 4 months developing those strategies to bring in folks. And then we give them the tools and they are able to carry on after that launch event to keep that coalition going or that pro-housing group going. And of course, after they graduate from our program, we never go away. We like to provide some continued support post-graduation. So that can include inviting them to other CHAPA events or other forums, keeping them involved and facilitating other kinds of peer-to-peer connections with our past communities, our current communities, and ones we are planning to work with in the future. We also are able to give folks some supporting materials. We have a toolkit that breaks down all the planning for a pre-launch, a sample agenda of what a launch event can look like, how to follow up with people afterwards, what can an invitation email look like, and folks can pick and choose what works for them out of that toolkit. As I said before, we like to facilitate peer connections with our past communities, our current communities, and so on and so forth, so that they can also learn from each other as well from us. And we are also giving them tailored graduation packets. So that can include instructions on how to host a hybrid meeting, how-to guides on how to use a MailChimp or a Google group, any kind of other resources or data that we want to share with folks. And again, giving them access to the stakeholder list so that they can now manage all of that work as an independent coalition after our initiative program. Last year, we were able to introduce sustainability grants. So not only were we able to give folks free technical assistance, we were able to give them actual money to carry out their efforts after they graduated from our programs. Folks have done a lot of different things with this money, but some of the examples have included hiring interns to do social media, paying for administrative services like a MailChimp or a SurveyMonkey to keep those projects going and to expand capacity. And another really crucial point of this work is our team, our municipal engagement initiative, is working on the ground, but we also coordinate with our policy team to bring what we're hearing on the ground to them to influence our next legislative session to make sure that those things are matching up, the things we're advocating for and the things that the people truly need on the ground. These are some photos from coalition meetings from the past couple of years, but I really wanted to emphasize the diversity in meeting spaces we have here. As you can see, we meet in exercise rooms. We help folks host walking tours of their communities. This was in a middle school auditorium because folks were this was in Hull. Folks in Hull are used to meeting in this middle school. So we did not want to say, well, let's just meet in a different place. If you're used to coming to this place once a month, we just want to piggyback off of what you're used to doing. It was really interesting. We had only 3 registrants for this event because folks are not used to registering for their town meetings in Hull. As you can see by this picture, more than 3 people showed up. So that's why we gave a registration form. But if folks aren't used to registering, we said, let's not worry, let's see who shows up. And as you can see, we had a really great turnout. And again, we're meeting in all kinds of different places and classrooms because that is where folks are used to meeting. And of course, when you're hosting these meetings, you want to eliminate as many barriers to engagement as possible and giving folks as many opportunities to engage as possible as well. So these are some common things that we hear as barriers to engagement and some ideas of how to mitigate those within what is in your wheelhouse. If there is a lack of childcare, you can try to provide childcare during the meeting if possible. Maybe there's a volunteer of a high school student or a young person that's willing to watch the children, and you print out some coloring sheets and they have something to do while the parent is a part of the meeting. If there's a lack of food, you can provide light refreshments. Sometimes we've even had restaurants donate food to a meeting. If the meeting room is not accessible, you can try to make it hybrid, making sure, or just make sure the room is accessible to all when possible. There is a language barrier. You can create marketing materials in different languages, provide interpretation, or hold a meeting in a language other than English. I think the most important part about interpretation is making sure that it is not seen as an afterthought, but as a crucial part of making sure as many people can engage with this work as possible. Thinking about the meeting schedule. If you are hosting a meeting at 7 a.m. on a Sunday, you probably won't get a whole lot of people to come out. So thinking about when people are used to meeting. Sometimes people are used to meeting on a Sunday or Saturday afternoon. In our experience with the Municipal Engagement Initiative, the sweet spot has really been evenings on Tuesdays through Thursdays, but a little bit later in the evening. So giving folks the space to pick up their children from school, maybe put some dinner on. And again, if you have a hybrid meeting, maybe somebody's able to listen in on the meeting while they're preparing dinner. So again, as many ways to engage as possible. There is a lack of transportation. You can offer carpooling or share local public transit routes as how to get to your meeting. There's a lack of time. You can share timeframes for meetings and for action items. Maybe folks are not available for a monthly meeting, but they have 2 to 5 minutes where they can sign on to a letter in support of an initiative or a project. And of course, something that everybody would love is stipends, because people's time is valuable, especially when they're sharing personal stories about their housing situations. So if you can provide finances to those people, that can also encourage further engagement. So what does success look like? These are only a couple of examples, and I know there are some friends here that are part of these groups, so if you have questions for them, you can ask them in the chat. I wanted to start off with the Revere Housing Coalition, which of course Laura will dig a little bit more deep into, but I had the privilege of working with this group and Laura back in my intern days of 2020 with CHAPA, so this is a really full circle moment here. But they were able to support the creation of an affordable housing trust fund, that advocated for representation of community members on that board, and worked on the first inclusionary zoning ordinance. The Greater Newburyport Housing Choice Coalition, that's the HCC Housing Choice Coalition. This was a regional effort of 5 communities. That was Amesbury, Salisbury, Newburyport, Newbury, and West Newbury. And they were really instrumental in putting forth public comments to push their Brown School redevelopment project over the edge at the city council. And now that project has been declared surplus land. They have a developer and they're going to start building. But because of our coalition, they were able to get that deeper affordability and have more affordable units. The original plan was for a building for this to be redeveloped into senior housing of 29 units, 8 of which would have been affordable at 80% AMI at the area median income, AMI. Now, all 29 apartments are going to be affordable to 30 to 60% of the area median income, which is about 40 to 50 grand for the greater Newburyport area. So that was more reflective of what seniors are actually receiving and making in terms of finances in that area. I also wanted to spotlight the Needham Housing Coalition, and I did see Paula on the call who was from that coalition, so special shout out to her. But they had a really great MBTA communities campaign. They were able to do these housing stories. They had high school students, seniors, and young families sharing their housing concerns in these YouTube videos that were really spectacular that I hope folks can take a look at. And they also had some really great collaboration with the Charles River Chamber of Commerce. So again, bringing in those unusual suspects, people that aren't necessarily in housing, but their work still intersects with the housing sphere. And in this work, we have some lessons learned. So some of the lessons we've learned, and again, this is not an exhaustive list, but be open to last minute changes in your agenda. You never know what could happen. A guest speaker could drop out at the last minute and you need to be ready, and you need to be ready to pivot your meeting. Focus on values and goals, not numbers. Asking the community, who are we as a community? What do we believe? Provide images and metaphors to help people visualize. There is a lot of data when it comes to housing, but when people are able to hear the stories and put the faces towards the data, that's what really resonates for folks in our experience. Don't overestimate how much people know, and don't make assumptions. Don't waste time trying to convince the inconvincible. You want to find those people that are on the fence and bring them over to your side. That's where you'll have the most success. And of course, as I'm sure many people on this phone call know, engagement should start as soon as possible. I think the worst thing you can hear after you've done months of engagement in a community about a project is, I never knew that this was happening. That's the thing we want to avoid the most. And of course, the importance of peer-to-peer learning. People in communities know who they want to be like, who they don't want to be like. So facilitating that peer-to-peer connection so that they can learn from those similar communities. It's connecting your coastal communities with other coastal communities, your rural communities, your suburban communities, and learning from each other in this space. And with that, I want to thank you all so much for this time. I'm going to throw it to Emma so I can answer some questions, and I'll be responding in the chat, but I'll share my email as well. So thank you all again for this time, and I'll stop sharing my screen.
Trying to find the unmute button. Thank you, Monica. I'm not seeing any questions yet in the chat, but just seeing lots of celebrations of all of the wonderful work that CHAPA does. So go ahead and read those, and I'll keep an eye out too if any other questions come up. We'll answer those at the end. Thanks so much, Monica.
Thank you.
And I am going to turn things over to Joyce as spotlight. Great. Thanks, Joyce. You can take it away.
Thank you. I am just going to share my screen, get it to slideshow. Can everyone see this? Yeah? Okay. I'm also going to time myself because I want to make sure that I'm not going over. So I'm going to put that. So I'm so thrilled, and I was so excited to hear everything that Monica was talking about with MEI. Abundant Housing Massachusetts, or we like to call ourselves AHMA, has been a great partner, and we love the MEI initiative, and we do a lot of the similar things. So it's been very exciting to tunnel in and hear what Monica had to say. So Abundant Housing Massachusetts, who are we? We're kind of the new kid on the block. We're a statewide organization, and we are now in our 5th year. So we started in the pandemic. And basically, our whole thing is that we believe that everyone in Massachusetts should be able to have a safe and affordable home. Massachusetts, housing for every single person. And the main issue that we address is the whole issue of housing supply, that we have a housing crisis in Massachusetts. We simply do not have enough homes for people who want to live here and live here affordably. This is within the next 10 years, we should have over 200,000 homes just to make sure that everyone has a place to live. And we have basically addressed this issue through zoning changes. So because Massachusetts has this severe housing shortage, we are advocating for more housing, for zoning changes to address exclusionary zoning rules. That means that a lot of our neighborhoods, especially in suburbs, are primarily zoned for single-family homes. And we also think of the importance of having homes near transportation and jobs. So we are a growing housing movement. We consider ourselves, AHMA considers ourselves an actual movement. We have over 400 individual members. So if people want to join as individuals, it's great. And we also at the same time have, it says here 15, but we have over 18 local affiliate groups in local towns and communities and in Boston. I was hired 2 years ago to work on organizing advocates and affiliate groups in communities that need to do a rezoning to zone for multifamily housing near transportation in compliance with the 2021 MBTA Communities Law. So my job, it's been so amazing. I've been able to go into communities and work with advocates to start their own pro-housing groups. And that's what I'm going to be talking about today, the organizing of local pro-housing groups. So why should we care? Maybe you're someone who's a planner. It's important to have advocates that are able to speak out about good pro-housing policies, about good housing projects on the local level. Or maybe you're someone who's on a planning board or on a town committee or an elected official. It's good to have advocates that can speak out. So we are speaking out. Advocates are speaking out. They're getting training and able to speak out at local boards, planning boards, zoning boards, commissions. And our advocates, we think of these local advocacy groups as actually incubators for education and for also taking the step to getting on boards. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. It takes a lot of bravery to say, yes, I'm going to step up to the plate and I'm even going to run for town meeting. I'm going to run for town council. I'm going to try to get on planning board. And our local groups are educating about housing. You know, it's interesting because when you see people who have been involved in local pro-housing groups, I'm thinking a lot about Brookline for Everyone, they start talking about zoning in a way that maybe planners do because we are immersed in the issue and learning together. And we are gaining power. As I mentioned, advocates are running for office, they're endorsing pro-housing candidates. A lot of what Monica was talking about with CHAPA, we do similar things. A little bit of a difference is that we do a lot of, we're now exploring becoming, opening up our own PAC or political action committee. We do a lot of things like text banking and canvassing and running turf and going out there and doing the hard organizing work to make changes in local communities. Tonight I have a text bank. We're going to be texting in Gloucester over 6,000 voters, actually almost 7,000 voters. So now I want to tunnel in for the rest of the next couple of minutes or 10 minutes that I have here. How do you start a group? Let's say you're a person, and I actually had someone contacting me from Framingham. He went to this meeting. People, as Monica was talking about with the neighborhood defenders, everyone was trashing a local project, housing project, and he felt alone. So you can see in the little graphic here, here's a little person who maybe feels alone. How do you find other people who maybe feel the same about housing, affordable housing, about making changes in your local town? So here are some different ideas. I think of it as kind of a recipe book, or, you know, just thoughts of how you would find other people. I want to say you are not alone. You may think you're not alone, but you're not. Research what is happening in town. You'd be surprised. Is there an affordable housing trust fund? What other policies have been passed in your community? What other projects are on the docket, housing projects that maybe are interesting and that you think that you could support? Research is a very important part. Connecting with ally groups, and Monica mentioned a little bit about this. This is so key. They may not be housing related, but there are groups that are maybe working on racial or social justice issues. We have had a lot of success with people, other groups are sustainability groups or climate change and environmental groups. That is a natural connection with housing. And so there are a lot of different groups that you can connect with. We've had a lot of success with linking up with churches and church groups, especially the UUs, the Unitarians. They are great. They often have social justice groups, climate change groups. So what other groups are doing things? Oh, I also want to say walk, bike advocates and transportation and mobility advocates, public health, people who are interested in public health, they're out there, connect with them. Tabling at events. There are events in so many towns, from farmers markets to harvest festivals. The most interesting place where I've tabled was in Southborough, where we went to the dump, because everyone goes to the transfer station to drop off their trash. So, and that was the place. Can we have 5 minutes to talk to you about housing? Online sleuthing. So that's like going on your Facebook feed or other social media accounts. Who's saying great things about housing? That's how Brookline for Everyone started. 2 people just looking at what people were saying and connecting in private messages saying, hey, I noticed what you said here. Can we have a one-on-one? Next part, one-on-ones. Don't downplay the importance of one-on-one conversations. We have a whole thing, if you're interested, on how to do one-on-ones, but it's basically, in the pickup line, for your kids at school, talking about housing. Hey, would you like to grab a cup of coffee? Your neighbor, hey, there's this project that's happening. Would you like to, about housing, would you like to grab a cup of coffee or come to my house for a slice of pie? These are just ideas. House parties, let's have a party at our house and let's talk about what is it like in this town with housing and what is your housing story? Going to public meetings and connecting with speakers. In different places, Norwood, well, there's a lot of different places. The people who are the pro-housing advocates go there and listen to other people talking in support, not just all the naysayers. And after that meeting, hey, I loved what you said. Do you want to go and grab a cup of coffee, or can we talk about this? I'm not going to talk about Jane Walk right now because I have an example later. But Monica did mention all the wonderful neighborhood walks, and I know that they did that in Needham as well. Organizing a workshop. We have done these really effective tell your housing story workshops, a place to call home, Norwood, a place to call home, or whatever your town is. We also have partnered with the Jewish Alliance, I always get this wrong, Jewish Alliance of Law and Social Action, JALSA. They have an amazing workshop on the history of exclusionary zoning and racial segregation, sort of the history of that. And it's very eye-opening, and it especially activates people who are interested in social justice issues. You have all these types of ways to reach out to people, and don't forget to create a contact list. Don't forget to make sure that you're contacting everyone, named, all the basic contact information, phone, email, how you knew them. I met this person at this event, or we had a one-on-one. I always have a note section so I'll remember, because if you have 100 people, you may not remember every detail. So I'll do a little note like this person lives outside of downtown and just moved to town, or whatever it might be. So that's it. So you know that you're not alone. What is the second stage? Maybe you found 5, 10, 20 people who are really interested in housing in your town. The most important thing is then bringing them together to start building community. and holding first gatherings to start saying, going from me to we, to start collectively building your vision. What is our vision here? What is our mission? What do we want to do in our town? And even the importance of naming your group. It sounds like a small thing, but when people sit around and figure out who are we and what do we want to be about, the name becomes so important. And once you do that, the importance of setting up a website and any social media accounts from Facebook, Blue Sky. Yeah, some people are still on Twitter and Instagram, whatever it might be. And this is a part of the second stage of going that from me to we. And as you're moving along and then saying, well, yeah, we really are a group and we want to do this, it's a matter of creating the leadership structure and making sure that there are people who are committed to being a part of a leadership team that will meet on a regular basis. AHMA considers it to be a real group if there is a leadership team of at least 4 to 6 people, if not more, that meet every month at a regular time on a regular basis. And of course, there's other ways, you know, other meetings that will happen and other things that will happen, but those are the bare bones of what we define as a group. And the leadership structure may be, who's gonna chair the meeting? Who's gonna set the agenda up? How are we going to communicate between meetings to make sure things get done? Then also there's a matter of how are you going to make decisions? A new group that I'm helping with in Haverhill, they have decided they're going to do majority rule. So based on Robert's Rules of Order, I tend not to do that, but that's what they decided on. And some people do consensus or modify consensus. I'm not going to go too into incorporation. A lot of the new groups, they don't incorporate. And most of our groups, when they're affiliates of AHMA, they get access to grants and technical assistance. And none of our groups, I should say, are registered as 501c3s, because as a C3, you can't do any of the advocacy movement to move your planning board or your town meeting or city council forward. So it just, so we really suggest not incorporating as a 501c3. I'm happy to answer questions about that. And then building external and internal communications. How are you going to communicate to your main leaders? Then there are the people who are the ones who are interested that and want to maybe occasionally go to a meeting. And then there are people, oh no, my 15 minutes, I'm going to cruise through. So let's cruise through. I have so much to say and not enough time. So I just want to say that this is an important slide. A good leader of a group doesn't do it all. A good leader is constantly recruiting new advocates and mentoring new leaders so that there's a sustainability. And we like to think of it as a ladder of engagement, ladder of leadership. You know, there are people who are going to be followers. You meet them maybe at a tabling event. They might vote for candidates that your group, if they ever endorse candidates, they might vote for that. They might get your newsletter if you develop a newsletter, but there are steps and you're helping people move up the steps. Maybe someone will do a shift at a table. Maybe the next step is they run the table and recruit volunteers. Maybe another step is, and this is relevant for this group, they're going to town to a planning board meeting to speak out. And that's another thing, or they're signing a petition. And then another step, even higher, is they're running for planning board or they're running for town meeting. And then they're becoming a leader on your group and are taking charge and taking on responsibility for the strategic direction, the structure, and the programming of your group. And
Joyce, if you want to take up until like 12:45-ish, I'm not seeing a lot of questions in the chat yet. So if you want to take 5 more minutes to go through these.
okay, it's all about taking action. Why are you doing this? Why are you meeting people? Why are you building a community, a sense of community? I should say that people are going to come for the issue. They are interested in housing. They're going to stay because of the community and because they feel good about being in that group. Okay, quickly fly through. I loved how Monica gave you 3 examples. It started with me and Kobe and Franklin. Here we are having ice cream. That was the first time I met him in person. If you've ever been to Franklin, Massachusetts, I would highly suggest a visit. It has a great downtown right near the train. You can walk everywhere. You can walk to Dean College. You can walk to the library. You can walk everywhere. It's like a 15-minute neighborhood. And Kobe felt all alone. Kobe is a young man, 20, he's a young man. I'll just say that. Everyone's young to me right now, but and the only reason why he can live in Franklin is because he lives in an accessible unit in his parents' house. All of his peers have moved out because they can't afford to live, and he's on town council. When I first met him, he said, I think I'm all alone. I don't know. I'm on town council. I have these radical housing ideas. I don't think I can push them forward. Anyway, quickly. We did tons of stuff. Here's Kobe. He's running a Jane Walk. A Jane Walk is a neighborhood walk, like Monica said, where you're going and doing walking conversations and talking about the built environment. It got more people involved. One of the people in this picture here is now the chair of their group. We also went to Strawberry Stroll, and we had tons of one-on-ones. We did a presentation and connected up with the Franklin Interfaith Group, and we got a ton of people. What did we do when he had a ton of people? We got them together and we played. I invaded my son's Legos. I brought these Legos. We dreamed, they dreamed, you know, I helped organize the whole thing, but they dreamed, what do we want to see Franklin? How do we want to, what do we want to see here? And you can see we use this Mentimeter in one of the pictures here. Their main thing is we want to build community. They were so pumped from this that they said, we want to start a group. We want to start a group. They started a group. It took them 3 sessions just to come up with their name, Building Equitable Neighborhoods, Ben for Franklin. Incredible. And it was so, the feeling was so good there. They have made some incredible changes. This was their launch event. I'm trying to go through this really quickly. So remember, Kobe felt very lonely. Less than a year later, he had a huge group. And within 6 months of that launch, Abundant Housing Massachusetts named them Rookie of the Year. They built a growing base of over 100 pro-housing advocates in Franklin. They created a website. They have Ben's take on proposed development projects and policies that went before planning and zoning boards. They were getting people out, you know, advocating for those positions. They successfully advocated for the reduction and elimination of parking minimums for Franklin's 3A district. And the town council unanimously supported their zoning. Also, in terms of this session here, they appointed numerous Ben-affiliated members to the zoning board and the master plan committee. And one of our leaders on Ben is currently running for town council. You can see him and he is in this. So exciting. So I just want to end. Thank you. I really am sorry if I took up too much time, but I want to say, if you think you're alone, you're not. If you think you can't do a group like this, you can. So those are my two things, statements that I want to end. Please feel free. Here's my email right here, joyce@abundanthousingmass.org, ma.org. If you want to set up a time and want to talk about your specific town, you want to vent to me, you want support, I'm happy to set up a one-on-one and support you in any way I can. So I'm going to end there. Thank you everyone for just going through this all with me.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Joyce. That was wonderful to hear all those tips that you had and getting pro-housing folks elected on boards. It was wonderful to hear all of that. Lots of kudos in the chat and some collaborations with AHMA and CHAPA got some shout outs too. Can you talk quickly about why those walks are called a Jane Walk?
Sure, sure. Excuse me. This is a lot. So, in May, there are these Jane Walks that are happening all over the world, actually. And if you want to go to New York, you can check them out. There's hundreds of them just in New York. These are walking conversations. They are named after Jane Jacobs, who was an urban theorist and a community organizer for great cities and great urbanism. In the 1960s, she wrote Death and Life of Great American Cities. And so we call these Jane Walks, named after Jane Jacobs, tending to happen in May, but you can have a Jane Walk or, as Monica said, a neighborhood walk at any time.
Great.
Yeah, I saw that in the chat. Yeah. You know, people can say, I mean, I love Jane Jacobs. She was at a time where people were leaving cities, and she was just trying to hold on to what was good and make sure they were being saved from the wrecking ball and from urban renewal and highways going through. But you're right, the recipe that she had, I'm kind of responding to things that I see popping up in the chat. That, I mean, is also a recipe for that people can use to say we shouldn't have more housing. We should keep things. But that being said, her ideas for what makes important lively neighborhoods is still key.
Great. Thanks for that background, Joyce. So without seeing any other questions, specific questions in the chat just yet, I'm going to turn it over to Laura, which is a great segue because they worked with CHAPA. So I'm going to hand things over to you, Laura.
Thank you, and I am going to share my slides. Everybody see that?
Yes.
Excellent. My name is Laura Holmes. I'm a resident of Revere, Mass, and a community organizer forever and a housing organizer the last several years. And really, I'm just going to tell you the story about how the Revere Housing Coalition came together, how we did stuff, and how we were where we are now. You may see in the slides, the Revere Housing Coalition abbreviated as RHC sometimes. I think the other abbreviations are spelled out for the most part in this. What you're looking at now is the mission statement that we wrote together. Not the title of it. The title I made, Revere Residents Are Housing Justice Leaders, because that's what we were all about, was, you know, fostering leadership among one another. It really started as community conversations, ironically, during COVID, that we started getting organized. You know, residents had been noticing for a long time we were having a building boom and a gentrification boom in Revere, especially the decade 2010 to 2020, and continuing on now, and accelerating during that time. So during lockdown in 2020, when a lot of us were strolling around the neighborhood outside and hanging out in each other's backyards, the conversation kept coming back again to housing and the latest displacements and the latest who was trying to buy a house but couldn't find anything they could qualify for or afford. And you know, it was clear there was a lot of anxiety around it. And when I started talking with people about organizing, one of the things that hasn't been mentioned yet that I heard a lot in my community was people felt very intimidated about the housing world. And even though their experiential knowledge gave them all they needed, I mean, they see what's going on just like anybody else, they were really, didn't have a lot of confidence to speak out. And there was no we have an affordable housing developer in Revere, the neighborhood developers who are great and who are part of our coalition, but there wasn't really any organizing happening among Revere residents. So also the other thing that happened in 2020, just before COVID locked us all down, was that many of us had been participants in a master planning process in Revere. And during that process, which was wide ranging and had really good community participation, a lot of focus groups and meetings on different issue areas. Well, surprise to no one here, I'm sure, affordable housing came up as a huge, huge issue for folks. And that also kind of helped kick off the Revere Housing Coalition, because we had a lot of data already from the report on that master plan about what exactly was going on with housing, and it affirmed all the things that we knew from our experience. You know, displacement, home ownership was out of reach for young families. Our young people who were graduating from high school and college couldn't afford to stay in Revere. Our teachers and our firefighters couldn't afford the rents in Revere anymore, and it's just, you know, what's happening all over were what was getting people really riled up. By the summertime and fall of 2020, people were starting to get used to organizing and meeting on Zoom. And that's really where the beginnings of the Revere Housing Coalition came together. We decided we needed to educate ourselves so that we wouldn't feel intimidated to speak up about housing. And we got a lot of help from CHAPA, which I'll talk more about from that, and from the Municipal Engagement Initiative, who somehow appeared in Revere. And maybe Monica can remind me exactly how this happened, or I can ask Whitney. But we were starting to want to come together as a coalition, and we got the opportunity to work with the Municipal Engagement Initiative, which was great because that could pay for Zooms. We could use CHAPA Zoom meetings in the beginning. Eventually we got our own Zoom account, but that was really helpful. Accessibility was really, really important, primarily language accessibility. You know, you walk down the street in Revere and you're gonna hear Spanish and Khmer and Arabic and Portuguese. Most of the translation that we did that was accessed was Spanish speakers. We had a lot of Arabic speaking members in our coalition, but most of them were also bilingual. So we started educating ourselves. We began to invite city officials. We invited the head of planning and development. We invited the mayor. And what worked really well about that was that we had already met enough times together on Zoom, so we had a culture of participation, kind of always had done check-ins, and no matter what language it was, we would have simultaneous interpretation most of the time. And so everybody was kind of used to sharing already, and when we were going to invite somebody to come, we would meet beforehand and help everyone brainstorm what questions they wanted to ask of that person. And everyone decided together, who did we want to have come speak to us? And it really was sort of it leveled things off so that someone would come as a guest speaker. They were on Zoom, we were all on Zoom. They were just one box in the 30 boxes. And it kind of encouraged dialogue, and little by little people gained confidence, started being ready to put together their testimony, put together newspaper articles and editorials, letters to the editors, develop what our plans were and our priorities were. And like I said, the help we got from CHAPA and the Municipal Engagement Initiative paid for Zoom, paid for translation, started paying stipends to those of us who were doing organizing. This stuff was so helpful, just little things, you know, that if you aren't a 501c3, which most housing organizers in communities are not, or at least not in the beginning, to have this little bit of money, you know, really goes a long way. So you can make flyers and all those kinds of things. They helped us do our first digital surveys. And even though we're multicultural and multilingual in Revere, we're pretty savvy on social media. Not me, less so me, but a lot of the folks in our community, they're used to filling out surveys on their phones and doing all that kind of stuff. So we began, to show up and support each other. People would do rehearsals of their testimony. We would encourage people to offer testimony, for example, at city council hearings, in whatever language they wanted to speak. It was up to, and if City Hall didn't provide the translation, we would have one of our members stand up with a person speaking Spanish, say, and would do the translation on their behalf. And so that way everybody was included. And you can see from the photos, it's really a beautiful, diverse group. And we had a very friendly, loving culture that developed out of that. It was wonderful to be a part of it. Another big theme in what we were always trying to accomplish was we wanted people to take us seriously. So you can see here we have T-shirts on for a city council hearing. Our numbers are a little more than they were in the first photo on the steps with handmade signs. We got our first win, as Monica mentioned in the beginning, with establishing an affordable housing trust fund. Now, this was fortunate, and this is why it's great to be part of a coalition, because it was actually people in the city planning department who helped identify that creating an affordable housing trust fund might be something we could pass in the city council. And so we were able to sort of back someone else's initiative. We were able to back the cities wanting to put this forward. And, for those guys to have us doing the organizing to make people show up and support their issue, they appreciated that. And we appreciated getting this Affordable Housing Trust Fund. And of course, I think we have now 3 seats on the board of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. And that's ongoing work, and then became yet another organizational member of the coalition. Then we had our first big frustration and disappointment when we also partnered with the city, actually the mayor at the time, who's no longer the mayor. I don't think this is the reason why, but we participated in the committee that created the proposed ordinance for inclusionary zoning. And what that meant was that a certain amount of units in a building over a certain size, I believe ours was anything over 9 units, a certain percentage was going to have to be deemed affordable. And there's a lot of in the weeds stuff about how you put together affordability levels and what you choose. You want to do 12% affordable, 15%, but we had been part of negotiations on all that and came together with other people in the city on an inclusionary zoning proposal that had broad support. Unfortunately, not enough support to win city council, and they voted us down, and we felt very disappointed and dissed and mad about that. And it was sort of hard to scrape ourselves back up together afterwards, but we eventually did, and knew that things had to go on. And we were also very fortunate that it was shortly after that big defeat that we were informed we were going to win this award from CHAPA for community engagement. And thank you, Monica. That really helped us to start believing in ourselves again, was that, okay, we may have lost this battle, but folks in the state still think that we're doing good work. And we all went to the big gala celebration, and most of us have not been to a lot of events like that. And you can see everybody was really happy and excited to do that. And so that was in the fall of 22. And then we regrouped at the time when it was local elections were coming up. in the fall of 2023. And the coalition got together, and we were so mad about what had happened in city council. We were really not inclined to support any of the candidates. We didn't want to try and run anybody. We just didn't have a lot of faith in the formal elected leadership in our city at that time. So instead, we decided, instead of doing supporting a candidate, we would instead run our own campaign, and that would be the Revere Fair Housing Campaign. And all through the election season, we were showing up to table and say, you know, these slides show the front and back of postcards we sent out. They're in Arabic, Spanish, and English, saying, no matter who you vote for, make sure you ask the candidates. Find out what the candidates are going to do about affordable housing. And our goal was to make housing the biggest issue in that campaign. And I think everyone would agree that we were very successful about that, because all the candidates started talking about affordable housing. It's really amazing that their tune began to change. And as it turned out in that election, I think we got at least 2, if not 3 to 4 more allies on our 9-member city council. So we've regained hope after that campaign. And then what did I have else to tell you about that? And then that was in 23, in the election of 24. And then through the summer of 2024, we did more. And all through all of this, our main way of doing organizing and outreach was we were always doing community workshops, Housing 101 workshops. We could do it at the Council on Aging. We could do it for house parties. If anybody wanted to organize a group of people, we would do it. We did it at Women Encouraging Empowerment, which is an organization that works primarily with immigrant renters in town. We did it at the Revere Community School, which is adult education classes offered in the evening in Revere. Again, language accessibility involved in all those workshops. And we were a road show that we'd show up with our slides and a couple of organizers and really stimulate conversation, getting people to share, like others have said, getting people to share their experiences with housing affordability or lack thereof, find out what people care about. And that has always shaped what our next campaign was going to be. And we continued to do that through last summer. You can see the photo on that slide is us set up at one of the community fairs that happened the same day as the farmers markets on Saturdays all summer long in Revere. So we've been learning, and we continue to morph. And what I feel like one of the major accomplishments we've made, besides getting folks on the board of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, we now have people on the board at the Revere Housing Authority. And we participated not only in the Inclusionary Zoning Advisory Committee, but also just several months ago, we were represented on the Housing Production Plan Advisory Committee. And Revere has now produced and had approved by the City Council a housing production plan, which was one of our original goals back in 2020. So this is also an affirmation that sometimes it takes longer than you think it's going to take to get these wins or change losses into wins. Sometimes it does come back around. In fact, after the housing production plan was released, we one of the biggest recommendations out of that was zoning reform. And of course, now discussions of what will look like inclusionary zoning. It probably won't be called inclusionary zoning because that didn't have a successful brand to it, did it, last time around? So in what form it's going to come up, I'm not sure yet. But these are some of the lessons that we learned. And I have made lots of great friends doing this work in my community. And also it sets us up so that we can do solidarity organizing in areas other than housing, which is also a really good benefit, especially now while the fears about ICE raids and stuff like that has been going on. It's nice that the Revere Housing Coalition can kind of pull up, you know, and send out emails to our 70 to 100 members and just provide information to people as we need to. I think that's about it for what I had planned to say, and I have not looked at questions yet.
Great, thanks so much, Laura. That was wonderful. Lots more kudos going on in the chat. And I see a great question came in about picking yourself up after losses like that. And I'd love to bring that up to the whole group after Amanda's presentation. So I'm going to, oh, and there was a question for you, Laura, about photo attributions and using your photos. So make sure you pop in and answer that one in the Zoom chat. And with that, I will turn it over to you, Amanda.
Thank you so much for that, Emma. Can everybody see my slides?
Yes, thank you.
Great. Okay, well, thank you all so much for being here. It is really amazing to see such strong interest in supporting affordable housing in all of the different ways that it takes to make it happen. The other presenters, this has been an amazing lineup, and they've provided a lot of excellent detail about the granular level of engagement and advocacy and a lot of those best practices. So to finish us up here today, I'm going to focus more on the things that are specific to my organization, the CDP. I'm Amanda Bebrin, the Director of Housing Advocacy at the CDP. Shout out to my Lower and Outer Cape peeps who are here today. So we cover the Lower and Outer Cape, sort of that like arm. And we've been doing that since 1992. The Lower and Outer Cape, yes, it's a vacation destination. It is also a pretty rural area of small towns that have really big population swings during the summer. And while tourism is the backbone of our local economy, it has also created a really disparate housing market that fuels our affordability gaps. So the Community Development Partnership, or CDP, my organization, is a CDC, a Community Development Corporation, which is a particular type of nonprofit organization. And we focus on economic development as well as affordable housing to support LMI, low to moderate income residents in our region. So we have a little bit of a different perspective and position in the community than some of our other speakers today. So some of the things we offer are small business technical assistance. We own and or manage 65 affordable units of permanent housing. We offer first-time home buyer and individual counseling. We have an ADU resource center, and we advocate for affordable housing. And that is what my department does, which we will talk about more in just a moment. And we do all of that so we can have a Lower and Outer Cape where people can afford to live, work, and thrive. I will apologize that I don't have a ton of pictures in my slides because my team is awesome at lots of things, but one thing I always forget about is for us to take pictures. So community development corporations can customize their offerings to their service area's needs, and the CDP has tailored our programming and approach to the Lower and Outer Cape over the years. So how do we build culture for affordable housing at a local level? We have a multi-pronged approach to leadership development, really, and it's tailored to a couple different audiences' needs and positions in the community. So the Lower Cape Housing Institute, or LCHI, this was created in 2017, and it's for municipal officials, elected and appointed board and committee members, and staff as needed. And that involves anyone who is involved in housing production. I won't rattle off the whole list of acronyms. I will say them all out. We invite people from affordable housing trusts, housing authorities, housing committees, select boards, planning boards, zoning boards of appeals, community preservation committees. We welcome housing planning and development staff. And we also invite anyone who's just interested in housing or is tangentially involved. And that could be residents, future town leaders, Finance Committee, Boards of Health, Conservation Committee, Historic. Really, if you're interested in knowing more about housing, we offer our programming free of charge. And the program was developed as a way to help the towns build capacity to understand and move housing applications, housing strategies forward. On the Lower and Outer Cape, we have town governments who have a lot of volunteer board and committee members who are really passionate about local service, but understandably might not know the really specified and specialized knowledge and jargon and processes that go along with affordable housing. So our format is that we have workshops on a series of housing topics. We start with Housing 101 every year, and then we move on to more advanced things like crafting effective RFPs, that's requests for proposals. The CDP, we see our role as being a convener and a facilitator. We don't present it as, oh, we as an organization think this is what you should do. We're dictating to you what you should decide as communities. Instead, we get speakers on the town, county, and state level to give case studies, to provide expertise, to explain best practices, and that helps demonstrate what's been done or what is being done in other places, usually with the conclusion that the sky has not fallen for trying something new. And it helps ground it in this big picture context. It is really easy to have this narrow perspective of your town or your region, but housing is really a regional, a statewide, and a national issue. And so we feel like wherever we can avoid having to reinvent the wheel to implement effective strategies, that's something that we should do. So our workshops are a range of educational opportunities for new and seasoned board members to develop a better understanding of how housing works and what their role is in moving their town's housing goals forward. Originally, this was an in-person 6-week course that then evolved to being virtual during the pandemic. And we've stuck with that because the Lower and Outer Cape is sort of this unwieldy geographic region with one road at the end of the Cape. So doing it via Zoom really allows us to have maximum participation. The other half of our programming for the Housing Institute is peer groups, and this is a less formal space aimed at trying to break down some of these silos. Our towns tend to be really insular. So convening the same audience of municipal officials and staff, but giving them space to build relationships with each other, to share across town lines and collaborate, to share best practices and news. Some of our attendees are here today, which I'm thrilled to see. Each of the towns is making progress on housing. And also we're helping shift this narrative to the fact that housing really is a regional and state and federal issue, and you can't tackle it without collaboration. It also really helps our town officials and staff to be able to make the case, to go back and say, hey, this town that's next to us is implementing this strategy and they're seeing these outcomes, we should consider it. Or we're trying something similar and we can anticipate some of the challenges and avoid them because someone else has already had that experience in the region. My team and I also provide technical assistance on a whole range of questions. We have a monthly newsletter that covers housing news across the region. We track and aggregate town meeting data to help highlight trends. And our towns are really doing as much as they can. Each town has, specific capacity, specific challenges, specific interests. But the Housing Institute, I think, is helping to fill this gap to get board and committee members some of that knowledge that they need to be well-versed in how housing works and to be confident in what their purview is as board members. So I picked these sort of interlocking gears to show how all the pieces fit together. The other piece that we work on is Project 365. It is our resident advocacy program. So we've heard from Joyce, we've heard from Laura. Project 365 is in a similar vein, as well as Monica and CHAPA's MEI program. We have a town meeting form of government where individual voices and groups of people turning up to vote in favor or in opposition can really sway the room. So Project 365 is aimed at building a bigger tent, like Monica talked about, aimed at bringing in people who don't typically participate or frankly don't feel welcome in the decision-making process. And that includes working age people, women, people of color, people who don't speak English as a first language, to educate them on how the system works and provide the staff assistance to know when to speak up and understand what their impact can be. So similar to the MEI program, we have found that having dedicated staff to do that sort of grunt admin work is integral to keeping the momentum going and allows the members to focus on the things that they care about. And our community organizers deal with scheduling meetings and doing minutes and sending agendas and things like that. So Project 365 is in its second full year, and we have 2 community organizers who support the creation of resident groups. We picked 2 towns in FY24 and then another 2 towns in FY25. And basically our model is that the groups choose something on the annual town meeting warrant that needs support, that will benefit the year-round community. And our staff helps them pick strategies to get the word out, to build that support, and hopefully get things passed at town meeting. As long as their interests are aligned with our mission, which is a pretty big one, this is really grassroots, and we're there to support them in whatever they're interested in pursuing. Mostly that is housing. Laura talked about what things are like in Revere, and I think the Lower and Outer Cape sees a lot of those dynamics in terms of who's struggling to afford to stay here, and what the cost of that is to our communities. But beyond housing, our groups are also interested in natural resource protection and emergency readiness, signal boosting existing programs that support year-round residents, like rental assistance and childcare subsidies that the towns are already providing, being a source of trusted information on town topics, and creating social and community opportunities for people to get to know each other and build relationships and belonging. As Joyce mentioned, they might come for a particular topic, but they stay because of the belonging in the community. Okay, so beyond the programmatic elements, what are we really aiming at that makes a difference in building this culture of support for affordable housing? So I would say that the overlap in the Housing Institute and the 365 program is sort of the secret sauce. So it's really crucial that we provide education, resources, and support. Like, what do the terms mean? How do all the processes work? And who participates in them? What are the best practices in housing production and community engagement? You know, what are current issues and emerging trends and their impact on housing? For our 365 groups, how does town meeting work? How does local government work? What do all the different boards and committees do? What's the role of staff? What's the role of the public? It is much easier to sort of play the game when you know the rules and the players. Resources that we provide can be anything from documentation and examples from other towns in the region to data and collateral from our state level partners. We partner with CHAPA and AHMA and MHP on lots of different things, as well as the state. It can be really effective to demonstrate that the thing a town is considering is not new, it's not risky, it's not unknown. Look, other communities have done this, and here's how it came out. Sometimes it looks like a reminder about open meeting law and how to run effective meetings. Support really ties into those next 2 bullets of leadership development and relationships. It isn't just providing the data and the information, but it's helping to shape that messaging, helping to navigate personalities and community concerns, knowing the local landscape and customizing the approach to each town, or even getting as granular to responding to specific concerns or sticking points. Oftentimes the work looks like helping them tease out the question behind the question. People do have legitimate concerns, but sometimes objections about increased traffic might actually be about a fear of the unknown, or a worry about new people coming into the community, or worries about, you know, things changing in the community. So if you just answer the question about the traffic, you haven't answered the actual question, even if they didn't articulate it that way. And so the team can help provide some ways to articulate those answers and sort of tease them out. And sometimes leadership development is reminding board and committee members what their charge is, and validating that they're focusing on things within their purview and that they're doing the right thing and making decisions that are appropriate and needed. You know, local government sometimes legitimately gets a bad rap for having bad actors that are really doubling down on maintaining the status quo. The Lower and Outer Cape governments have certainly some people who are like that, and a lot of people who are interested in seeing things done differently, who understand that sort of the way we've been doing things doesn't work for everyone and isn't working for our communities and our region, and want to see things done differently. And it's really cool to be able to have those relationships and support those people. And so I would say that the secret sauce of the secret sauce is relationships. Number one, because Cape Cod is a place where who you know and who you have relationships with is part of how you how effective you can be in your work. So the CDP is an organization that's been around since the 90s, and we keep showing up. We keep adjusting programming to meet community needs. We keep providing good information, and building that trust over time has really been crucial to our success. I'll get calls from my staff contacts or board or committee members, and they'll say, I had a question, or I was talking to someone who had a question, and the thing that popped into my head was, Amanda will know the answer to this. The CDP will know how to help me. And those are some of my favorite moments in this job, because I'm like, oh my God, it's working. They had a housing question and they thought of me first. They trust me not just to have the information, but to make it relevant to them. And sometimes to give them not just the answer to their question, but to provide information that they didn't even know to ask for that is relevant. So what have we managed to accomplish in the Housing Institute and 365? So we have 4 town Project 365 groups. Last year at town meeting, both groups saw passage of all the articles that they supported overwhelmingly. Excuse me. They handed out flyers, they text banked, they did a letter to the editor campaign that was so successful that the editor of the paper did an editorial on the topic in response. They coordinated remarks and talking points on town meeting floor. It was a really incredible first year, and we're excited to see how this year's town meeting season shakes out. The Housing Institute, which in turn is inspired by MHP's Housing Institute, has had 463 unique attendees since 2017. So if we say ballpark, there's about 200 board and committee members per town, potential audience of about 1,600 people. That works out to like 1 in 4 people in the region has attended at least one Housing Institute offering, and I think that's pretty cool. Many people attend multiple sessions throughout the curriculum year. In FY24, we had 49 new attendees, and in FY25 so far, we have 66 new attendees. So I think we're really hitting that sweet spot of new people coming into the board and committee, local government structure. I did also want to mention that the CDP is partners in an affordable housing development in Wellfleet, the residences at Lawrence Hill, and our team did the community engagement with the abutters and with the larger community. And we were able to get that 40B permit moved through the permitting process in just a matter of months and with 0 objections from the public, which is basically unheard of. So that development has been funded, it closed, and it is currently under construction. And I think that's the proof is in the pudding that community engagement, having a strategy, it works and it has a tangible impact on removing barriers to housing production. Okay, so what have we learned? A lot. I tried to boil it down for you. Some of this echoes what the other speakers have talked about. One thing that's really important that I always forget to talk about is that my team tracks agendas for all 8 towns that we cover. So every Monday, we go through all of the agendas for the Select Board, Planning Board, Community Preservation Committee, Zoning Board of Appeals, Affordable Housing Trust, and Housing Committees, and see where there are housing related discussions. And then we figure out, do we send somebody to speak to something? Do we attend in person or watch live or after the fact? Do we let our 365 members know that they should attend and speak? Do we use our relationships to find out what happened afterward from a board member or for staff? But this is really critical for us to know what decisions are being made, what conversations are being had, and what is the content of them, so that we can sort of strategize accordingly. This is also our opportunity to reach out to board members and say, hey, one of my community organizers recently reached out to one of the committee chairs and said, hey, we know you're bringing a zoning change to town meeting. Would you like some resources from other places in Massachusetts that have done the same thing? Here's how they talked about it with residents. Here's the collateral that they created. Like, do you think that would be helpful for your committee? And he was super appreciative, and felt like he didn't have to reinvent the wheel, or the committee didn't have to start from 0, and felt emboldened by the fact that other places were successfully navigating bringing zoning changes to town meeting, which can be really challenging. Similarly, if a town is working on an RFP or request for proposals, this other town went through that recently. Why don't you go talk to this person in this town and find out about what it was like? Or here's the draft of their RFP from when a different town went through it. See if there's language that you like, see if there's anything that you're missing. I think I've woven this sort of trust and credibility piece throughout the presentation. One example I'd like to highlight is that the Housing Institute used to do a wrap up at the end of the program with town staff and board members and CDP staff to evaluate the program and talk about specific town needs. And in a particular year with 2 different towns, a discussion about the value of having dedicated municipal housing staff came up, and 2 towns after those conversations immediately took action to implement getting housing staff. And now 7 of our 8 towns have town housing staff, with the final town hopefully passing it at town meeting this year, which has really been a game changer in the region's ability to move housing forward. Again, relationships. Who's in which roles and how can you support them? What points need to be made as part of a discussion? Which perspectives are missing? And who should deliver those messages? Is it right to come from a board member? Does it have more impact coming from a member of the public? Is it something we want to let our 365 members know about? I'm going to borrow this one from my dating life. Framing it as us versus the issue and not us versus them is really important. We're all here to work on housing. We might have different whys, we might have different ideas about how we should go about doing that. But as much as possible, grounding it in, we're all here to get to the same destination, I think really shifts that conversation in an important way. A through line for the program is vision and values. We always come back to vision and values, and we encourage our board and committee members, our staff, our advocates to do the same thing, to say, this is something that we agree that we care about. It's in our local comprehensive plan. It's in our housing production plan. It's in the select board's strategic plan. It's something residents are feeling the impact of and are talking about. We're not proposing zoning changes to allow density just for the heck of it. It's not some random thing that popped up out of nowhere. We have consensus that we care about housing, about keeping people in our community, attracting new people, providing services and jobs and amenities that make a place worthwhile to live in. And so in order to work towards all of those goals, we change the zoning to allow density. We build housing developments to ensure that people have homes that they can afford. And lastly, I'll just echo what Laura said, that this is a long game, so just keep going. 6 or 7 years ago, we could not talk about affordable housing on the Cape in a mainstream way. The sort of mainstream conversation did not want to hear that people were struggling to afford to live here, that young families were leaving en masse. And now it's in the papers every single week, every day. The conversation has largely shifted away from, do we need to do something about housing, to what are we doing about housing? And on the lower and outer Cape, every town has at least one town-initiated housing development in the works, and that adds up to a pipeline of more than 1,000 units in the next 5 to 10 years, which won't solve the problem, but it is a tremendous sea change in attitudes and in progress. We in the housing world often talk about all the tools in the toolbox. There are lots of ways to work on housing, so just keep banging that drum, and over time it does work. And the last platitude I'll throw in for free is be the change that you want to see. I started off as a realtor. I was concerned about my local clients not being able to buy in the Cape Cod area. Said, why can't we just build more houses? Well, it's because of the zoning. So I said, okay, well, in my town, who's in charge of the zoning? It's the planning board. So I ran for planning board, and I learned about affordable housing, and I stayed involved in local government. And now this is what I do for work, and I get to help all of you in your journeys to support affordable housing where you are. So it's really easy, especially when you talk about housing, to get overwhelmed and be like, I'm one person, like, what does it matter? What could I ever do that would move the needle on this? But truly, if every one person takes that one extra step, that cumulative effect is really something incredible. Thank you so much. I have been watching I can't see the Zoom, so I'm going to stop sharing and see if there are questions for me. That was a lot. I always get told that I talk too quickly, but I had a lot that I thought was relevant to cover.
That was wonderful. Such a great note to end on. Thank you, Amanda. I want to be cognizant of everyone's time. So if there are any questions we didn't get to answer, I didn't see many come in, but if there are any, feel free to reach out. All these slides will be on the housing toolbox, and you can reach out to these folks directly. You can reach out to MHP. We're always all here as resources. I loved Amanda's quote about it's easier to play the game when you know the rules. And I think we really hope that this training series overall helped achieve that. Local boards understanding their roles, and advocates getting to learn the game too. So with that, I wanted to thank the speakers today for all of your time putting together all this wonderful information. It was really great to have all of your expertise shared. And thank you, all of you attendees, for sharing your time with us and joining us. Again, all the resources will be available on the toolbox for you to revisit. And we hope you stay engaged, and please reach out to us for help. We look forward to working with you all. Take care.